Christianity, but it is. Protestant work ethic comes from Protestantism. We know the value of work. Why? Work because man has to work. Why does a man have to work? Man has to work because of the fall. Why did man fall? Because he was seduced by Eve. All of this is connected, right? It seems laborious, and I know it does seem laborious, and presenting this is challenging. It's laborious in a sense, but it's like Nietzsche is laborious in his account. He goes over the point again and again and again because he's like, you guys just don't understand how much what you are doing that you think is novel is being informed by Christian ideological stances. And insofar as I see it everywhere in the world, and he itemizes it where he sees it, I need to go over the points again and again and again, because what we have to be able to do is to tell a story that hasn't been informed by the Christian story, right? We have to be able to tell a story that's a new type of story, and I'm jumping way ahead, but that's what we need to do. Okay. Examples of this subterranean Christianity: Kant's inversion of the golden rule. The golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Kant's inversion of that is sort of like, don't do to others what you would not want them to do to you. So Nietzsche's like, look, dude, you're not fooling anybody, and I'm being sort of flippant, but that's just how it is, right? But that's basically what he's saying, right? He's like, look, you know, the inversion of the golden rule, it's novelty, right? And obviously I'm playing the role of Nietzsche here because I love Immanuel Kant. Moral obligation, right? The fact that you tyranny, he talks about tyrannizing, right? Your obligation, your system of morality becomes a tyrannical morality. Oh man, this is just, I think I'm the only person that gets this crunk on analyzing. You catch yourself sometimes, you're like, well, but it's true, right? It's ridiculous to think, and I'll give Nietzsche that, right? That part of Kant, I do like the two formulations of the categorical imperative, but the shopkeeper examples and stuff, it's like, Kant, are you serious, dude? Like, no, it's ridiculous. So I think I would say, like, for me, the shopkeeper, and for those of you who don't know, Google it, but the shopkeeper examples, Kant's way off base. The categorical imperatives, the two formulations, I'll give him that. But Nietzsche probably wouldn't even give him that, because in the categorical imperatives, he has maxims, right? It's this thing where you universalize the action to see if it applies to everybody, and if it's fair, and if it maintains its benefits, and and Kant, and for Kant, you know, this is an obligation that we have. And for Nietzsche, it's like, who's giving me this obligation? Kant, Immanuel Kant, the freaking the moral fanatic, right? You can imagine Nietzsche being like, I'm gonna take moral obligations from Kant. I think for Nietzsche, it's laughable, right? It's crazy. It's crazy. But he goes even so far, and I jump way ahead here, but you know, in reading, I was like, I wanted to incorporate, because I have like tons and tons of notes and references in my book in the margins. So I want to incorporate it here. He goes, Kant, in note 127, much later on, Kant is a scarecrow someday, right? Like, dude, Kant is a scarecrow. Just think of the implications of that, right? So it's important to recognize how, when we're talking about progress, how Kant and Rousseau have contributed for Nietzsche so much to our regress. While Kant and Rousseau are attempting to pull us back, what Nietzsche is trying to do is he's trying to loosen the grip that Immanuel Kant has had on Western philosophy, loosen the grip that Rousseau has had on sort of our social and our interactive cultural aspects and even political aspects, right? Alright, just a quick aside, because you know, anytime he talks about fatherland, anytime he talks about this stuff, I like highlighting it, because you can never really definitively say, and I don't think any scholar can definitively say where Nietzsche stood. Were his ideas useful to the National Socialist Party? Well, probably they were. Does that mean that his ideas were bad? Well, no, they weren't, right? I mean, obviously, we know the time that Nietzsche writes, right? These notes are in the like 1880s, right? So, and we know that Adolf Hitler doesn't rise to power for a couple decades after that, right? So, I mean, we know that. But what does he say, right? And this is what I thought was interesting. This is a quote from Note 107. Today, under the high pressure of fatherlandism, right? So that he recognized, much prior to Hitler's attaining of power, that there was this pressure, like that idea. And it would be interesting to see how far back you could trace the idea. I'm not a scholar of sort of Germanic studies at all, but it would be interesting, and I would do maybe the reading just as for entertainment for myself. But today, under the high pressure of fatherlandism and self-admiration, that is the German spirit, it is visibly thickening and becoming coarse. Right? So he recognizes a certain detachment, right? A certain pessimism setting in, right, within the society. And he recognizes that this pessimism, and you have to recognize that this pessimism and discouragement can only set in as a consequence of the influence of Christianity, which he thinks is a bad thing. So for Nietzsche, it's like, and later on we'll see his contempt for socialism, because he talks at length at how much he can't stand socialism in the next note. And actually, I'll just jump ahead real quick and tell you what the note is. It's in, it's like one of the last notes, actually. Where is it? Just a quick side. In note 125, he'll start talking about how much he doesn't like socialism. But now it's just like, you know, the attempt to try and cookie cutter and just say, oh, well, Nietzsche and the Nazis is not that simple. Nothing about Nietzsche is simple, right? Maybe yes aspects, yes, maybe no aspects, no, right? The point is, the aspects that you think are helpful, incorporate it. The aspects that you think are detrimental, for especially the stuff that he says on women, do away with it. Some of the stuff that he says on with respect to breeding, get rid of that stuff, right? But the stuff that's good, keep it. Next point, quote, this is 113a. One shrinks from extremes, a certain confidence in the right road, no enthusing, temporary acclimatization to narrow values, like fatherland, like scholarship, right? So he looks at the idea of fatherland as he says it himself, right? The acclimatization to narrow values, right? He looks at the idea of fatherland as being a narrower value. I don't think he holds that idea with any sort of reverence, right? Which is absolutely contrary to sort of the National Socialist agenda, right? So it isn't. I would say it's. I wouldn't say it's clear cut, right? And I do love the fact that Love 84 Forever and secular Numinists precisely disagreed on this point. But there are instances where you can see he might be used to sort of strengthen the party. But then again, there are points where he's saying, listen, the idea of fatherlandism is a narrow value. It's, in a sense, deflated. There's a sense in which, when we talk about socialism, it's complete crap. He doesn't buy it at all, right? He thinks it's a form of weakness. So, I mean, then you take the idea of socialism from National Socialist Party and fatherlandism, which was obviously one of the main staples of the party, and you try to tie that to Nietzsche. I'm not saying it's an impossible thing to do, but I'm going to say it's not that clear, and there's definitely room for debate, which is why the text is a good text, because it leaves room for debate. All right, problems for the 19th century. The modern world is the next section. The first thing that he says, that some of the problems we encounter. But first, listen to this principle. Quote, there is an element of decay in everything that characterizes the modern man. Right? And we know what that means. I'm not even going to discuss that. Right? We know what that means. We've spent time doing that. 1a. The ambiguous character of our modern world, the very same symptoms could point to a decline and to strength. So when we're talking about nihilism then, right, you have to recognize that there is a sense in which we can explain nihilism or discuss nihilism nihilism as good and right, there's a good sense of nihilism, if you will, and there's a bad sense of nihilism, right? So we can discuss nihilism in terms of that which is good, but we can also discuss nihilism in terms of that which is bad.